Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Talk Everyday Conversations channel. I'm your host, Lily.
And I am your host, James. We are so happy that you are here with us today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Talk Everyday Conversations. I'm James.
And I'm Lily. Thanks for joining us today.
Today we're talking about sport, which is one of those topics that seems to appear everywhere in English conversations.
Yes, especially in everyday situations like work, social events, or casual chats with people you don't know very well.
And what's interesting is that people often assume everyone loves sport.
Which is definitely not true.
Exactly. So let's start very simply. Lily, are you into sport?
Not particularly, to be honest. I don't hate it, but it's never played a major role in my life.
That's a really useful answer for learners, actually.
Why do you say that?
Because it's honest, natural, and it doesn't sound negative or rude.
Yes, I think saying not particularly sounds much softer than just saying no.
Absolutely. For me, it's the opposite. I've always been quite sporty.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
I grew up playing football and basketball, and sport was a big part of my routine.
See, my experience was very different. At school, I always felt awkward during sports classes.
Was it because you didn't enjoy competition?
Partly, but it was also confidence. I never felt comfortable being watched or compared to others.
That's something a lot of people relate to.
Yes, and I think those early experiences can influence how people feel about sport as adults.
Do you think that's why many adults avoid trying new sports?
Definitely, there's a fear of embarrassment.
And no one likes feeling embarrassed in front of others.
Exactly, especially as an adult, when you feel you're expected to be competent.
That expectation can be quite intimidating. Let's pause here and look at a few advanced words we've already used. The first word is competent. If someone is competent, it means they're reasonably good at something and capable of doing it well. For example, adults often feel they should already be competent at sport. The next word is intimidating. Something intimidating makes you feel nervous or uncomfortable because it seems difficult or overwhelming. For example, joining a new sports club can be intimidating. And one more word, awkward. This means feeling uncomfortable or not confident in a social or physical situation. For example, I felt awkward during sports lessons at school.
Those words really describe how many people feel about sport.
They do. Now let's talk about watching sport. Do you enjoy watching it?
Only occasionally. I enjoy watching tennis, especially big tournaments.
What about football?
Honestly, I struggle to stay interested.
That's fair. A lot of people feel the same way.
I think watching sport requires emotional investment, and I just don't have that.
That's a really good way to put it.
I'd rather do something active than sit and watch for hours.
For me, watching sport is almost a social ritual.
What do you mean by that?
I usually watch matches with friends. We talk, joke, react, and sometimes argue.
So it's not just about the sport itself.
Exactly. It's about shared emotions.
I can see why that would be enjoyable.
And that's why sport works so well as a conversation topic.
Because even if you don't care deeply, you can still comment on it.
Right. You can agree, disagree, or stay neutral.
And staying neutral is often very useful.
Especially in professional environments.
Yes, talking about sport at work can help people connect without getting too personal.
That's a really important point. Let's look at a few more higher-level words related to this. The word investment in this context means emotional energy or interest. For example, I don't have much emotional investment in football. Next word, neutral. This means not extreme or controversial. For example, sport is a neutral topic for small talk. And another useful phrase is connect with others. This means to build a social relationship. For example, talking about sport helps colleagues connect with each other.
Those are very practical phrases.
They really are. Now let's talk about actually doing sport or physical activity.
I don't really call it sport, but I do try to stay active.
What kinds of activities do you do?
I go swimming a couple of times a week, and I do yoga when my schedule allows.
That sounds very balanced.
It feels balanced, and more importantly, it doesn't feel stressful.
That's a big difference from competitive sport.
Exactly. I don't feel pressure to perform or improve.
I'm very different in that way. I enjoy tracking progress.
You like measurable results.
Yes, scores, wins, improvement, those things motivate me.
And that shows how personal motivation really is.
How did you start swimming regularly?
It wasn't planned at all. I was feeling stressed and needed something calming.
So it was an impulsive decision?
Yes, completely.
That's actually very common.
Once it became part of my routine, it felt strange not to do it.
Routine plays a huge role in maintaining habits.
Absolutely. Motivation comes and goes, but routine stays.
That's a great insight. Let's stop for our last vocabulary explanation in this part. The word impulsive means acting suddenly, without planning. For example, starting swimming was an impulsive decision. Next word, maintain, means to continue doing something over time. For example, it's hard to maintain a fitness routine. And finally, pressure. This means stress or expectation to perform well. For example, competitive sport creates pressure for some people.
Those words are very useful beyond sport.
Exactly. That's why learning vocabulary through conversation is so effective.
All right, let's pause here.
In the next part, we'll talk more about motivation, competition, and social versus solo sports.
So stay with us.
So, last time we talked about confidence, routine, and how people get into sport in very different ways.
Yes, and I think that's reassuring for learners. There isn't one correct relationship with sport.
Exactly. Now let's talk a bit more about motivation, because that's where people really differ.
Motivation is such a tricky thing.
It is. For example, I can't motivate myself to exercise unless there's some kind of goal.
A clear goal?
Yes, a match, a competition, a score to beat, something measurable.
That's interesting because for me, goals actually reduce my motivation.
Really?
Yes, the moment something feels like a target or obligation, I start resisting it.
So pressure has the opposite effect on you.
Exactly. I need freedom, not structure.
That explains why you prefer activities like swimming and yoga.
Yes, there's no winning or losing. I can just focus on how I feel.
Whereas I enjoy knowing whether I've done well or badly.
You like clear outcomes.
I do. They give me a sense of achievement.
I think that difference is very common.
And it's important for learners to recognize what motivates them personally.
Yes, because copying someone else's routine rarely works.
Absolutely. Motivation has to be internal. Let's pause here and unpack a few advanced words we've just used. First word, obligation. An obligation is something you feel you must do, even if you don't want to. For example, exercise feels like an obligation for some people. Next word, resist. To resist means to push against something or try not to do it. For example, I start resisting exercise when it feels forced. And another useful phrase, sense of achievement. This means a feeling of satisfaction after completing something successfully. For example, winning a match gives me a strong sense of achievement.
Those words describe motivation really well.
They do. Now let's talk about competition more directly.
Okay.
Do you think competition is healthy?
It depends. For some people, yes. For others, it creates unnecessary stress.
I think competition brings out the best in me.
And for me, it brings anxiety.
That's such a clear contrast.
I think competitive environments can feel hostile if you're not confident.
That's true. They can feel unforgiving.
Exactly. Mistakes feel bigger when people are watching.
I guess I've learned to separate mistakes from my self-worth.
That's a very useful skill.
It took time, though.
I imagine it did.
I think sport taught me resilience.
Resilience is such an important word.
It really is. Let's pause again for vocabulary. The word hostile describes an environment that feels unfriendly or aggressive. For example, competitive sports can feel hostile to beginners. Next word, forgiving. If something is forgiving, it allows mistakes without serious consequences. For example, non-competitive exercise is more forgiving. And finally, resilience. Resilience is the ability to recover quickly from difficulties or failure. For example, sport can help build resilience.
Those words apply to life far beyond sport.
They really do. Now let's talk about social aspects. Do you prefer doing physical activities alone or with others?
Mostly alone.
Why is that?
Because it feels calmer. I don't have to adjust to anyone else's pace or expectations.
That makes sense.
It also feels more personal, like time just for me.
I'm almost the opposite. I need other people around me.
For motivation?
Yes, and for accountability.
You don't want to let the team down.
Exactly. If I know people are expecting me, I'll show up.
That external pressure works for you.
It does. It keeps me consistent.
Whereas I need flexibility.
That's such an important distinction.
And again, learners should notice how personal these choices are.
Absolutely.
Let's explain a few more advanced phrases related to this. First phrase, accountability. This means being responsible to others for your actions. For example, team sports create accountability. Next word, flexibility. Flexibility means the ability to adapt or change easily. For example, I need flexibility in my exercise routine. And one more phrase, adjust to. This means to change your behavior to fit a situation. For example, I don't like adjusting to other people's schedules.
That phrase is very useful.
Yes, it comes up a lot in everyday English. Let's shift slightly and talk about age. Do you think people's attitude towards sports changes as they get older?
Definitely. I think priorities change.
In what way?
People start valuing health and sustainability over performance.
That's a really good point.
They want activities they can maintain long term.
I've noticed that too.
High-impact sports become less appealing.
Yes, injury becomes a bigger concern.
Exactly. Recovery takes longer.
That's something younger people often underestimate.
Very true.
Sport becomes less about proving something.
And more about well-being.
That shift is important. Let's do one final vocabulary explanation for this part. The word sustainability in this context means something you can continue long-term without harm. For example, swimming feels more sustainable than competitive running. Next word, priorities. Priorities are the things that matter most to you. For example, health becomes a priority as people get older. And finally, underestimate. This means to think something is smaller or easier than it really is. For example, young athletes often underestimate recovery time.
Those words are extremely relevant.
They are, and they're useful in many conversations beyond sport.
All right, I think this is a good place to pause.
In the final part, we'll help listeners build longer, more confident answers about sport in English.
Yes, because many learners can answer short questions, but struggle when conversations require more detailed responses.
Longer answers help conversations feel natural and reduce pressure to respond quickly or perfectly.
They also give speakers time to think, which is very helpful when using a second language.
I usually recommend a simple structure that learners can reuse in many conversations.
That kind of structure can make speaking feel much more manageable and less stressful.
First, you talk about your general attitude toward sport, whether positive, negative, or neutral.
Then you explain what you actually do or don't do in terms of physical activity.
Finally, you give reasons, which makes your answer sound complete and thoughtful.
That approach works even if you don't like sport very much.
Exactly, because honesty always sounds more natural than trying to impress someone.
Many learners worry too much about sounding interesting instead of sounding real.
That worry often creates unnecessary stress during conversations. Let's pause here and explain some advanced vocabulary learners can use when talking about speaking itself. The word fluency refers to the ability to speak smoothly without long or uncomfortable pauses. For example, building longer answers helps improve fluency, even if your grammar is not perfect. Another important word is anxiety, which means strong nervousness that can block clear thinking. Speaking English can cause anxiety, especially when learners fear making mistakes. The verb freeze describes the moment when someone suddenly cannot speak because of nervousness. Many learners freeze during conversations, even when they know the words they want to say.
Those words describe very common problems that language learners experience every day.
They do, and understanding these problems helps learners feel less alone.
So, how can learners reduce that anxiety when talking about sport or other topics?
One effective method is practicing complete answers out loud before real conversations.
That kind of preparation can make spontaneous speaking feel much easier.
Let me give an example of a longer, natural answer about sport.
Okay, that will be helpful for listeners.
I enjoy some sports, but I wouldn't describe myself as extremely athletic or competitive. I play football most weekends with friends, usually in a local indoor league. For me, the most enjoyable part is the social atmosphere, not necessarily winning matches.
That answer sounds relaxed and confident without using very complicated language.
Exactly, and that's what learners should aim for.
Can you give an example from a very different perspective?
Of course, I'll try one that reflects your attitude toward sport. I'm not really into sports, but I try to stay active because I value my health. I go swimming a few times a week, usually on my own, because I find it calming. For me, exercise is more about balance and well-being than competition or performance.
That answer clearly explains feelings, habits, and reasons in a very natural way.
And it shows that disliking sports is completely acceptable in conversation.
Another challenge learners face is dealing with silence during conversations.
Yes, silence often feels uncomfortable, especially when people are searching for words.
But silence doesn't always mean something is wrong.
Exactly. Pauses are normal and natural part of spoken communication. Let's explain a few useful words related to handling silence and mistakes. The word panic means sudden fear that stops clear thinking and confident speaking. For example, learners should not panic if they forget a word during conversation. Another word is pressure, which refers to stress created by expectations or self-criticism. Trying to speak perfectly creates unnecessary pressure and reduces confidence. Finally, the word natural means relaxed and realistic, rather than forced or artificial. Speaking with pauses sounds more natural than speaking too fast without thinking.
That explanation will really help learners feel more comfortable with their speaking style.
I hope so, because comfort leads to improvement.
What advice would you give learners who want to practice effectively at home?
I strongly recommend practicing answers out loud, even if you are completely alone.
Many learners feel strange talking to themselves at first.
That feeling disappears quickly, and the benefits are very real. Let's explain a few final vocabulary items connected to practice and improvement. The word familiarity means knowing something well through repeated experience. Practicing answers creates familiarity, which reduces hesitation during real conversations. Another important word is confidence, which means belief in your ability to do something. Regular speaking practice gradually builds confidence, even if progress feels slow. The verb reduce means to make something smaller or less intense. Practice helps reduce fear, anxiety, and hesitation over time.
Those words are useful for talking about learning any skill, not just English.
That's true, and that's why vocabulary like this is so valuable.
Before we finish, let's give listeners one final speaking challenge.
Think about sports from 3 clear angles before answering any question. First, decide how you feel about sport in general without overthinking your response. Second, think about what activities you actually do, even if you don't call them sport. Third, explain why you do those activities, focusing on feelings rather than facts.
That structure makes speaking much easier and more organized.
And it helps learners avoid very short answers that stop conversations quickly.
That's a great point, especially in social or professional situations.
Remember that mistakes are normal and expected when learning a language.
They are part of the process, not something to avoid.
Being patient with yourself is just as important as studying vocabulary or grammar.
That mindset makes learning more enjoyable and sustainable.
All right, that brings us to the end of today's episode of Talk Everyday Conversations.
We hope this discussion helped you feel more confident talking about sport in English.
Practice a little every day, even if it feels uncomfortable at first.
And remember that progress comes from consistency, not perfection.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye for now, and keep practicing your everyday English.